The camera zoomed in on the velvet couch. She didn't know it was live. Not at first. Not when she laughed like that, head tossed back, the same way she used to when we'd sit in the basement watching dumb horror movies. Not when she reached for the wine. Not when her fingers slowly laced through his like it was the most natural thing in the world. No one was supposed to be watching. Except I was. I saw everything. And the worst part? The only reason I noticed her at all was because the guy next to me said, "Man, she looks like my ex." I leaned forward. She is my wife. And just like that, the lie she told an hour earlier about being buried in conference calls with marketing and ops shattered. Shattered with a sharp, invisible sound, like glass cracking inside my skull. I had followed her there, yes. I wish I hadn't. But it wasn't a trap. It wasn't a sting operation or some grand moment of revelation. It was worse, so much worse. It was accidental. I only came to the building because her phone location had stopped updating midday, and I had this gnawing, stupid little ache in my chest like maybe something had happened. I'm not proud of checking her location, but I was tired of pretending her answers still made sense. I didn't even get past the lobby. There was a tech expo on the second floor. Security thought I was there for that. I sat down by the giant LED wall in the main corridor, not even realizing what they were screening, just some muted stream labeled Studio 6 VIP Fireside. And then there she was, wearing the same blazer I bought her last winter. Hairstyled differently. Heels she said gave her blisters, now worn like they were part of her. I couldn't breathe. My fingers twitched so hard. I dropped my phone twice before I could even open the camera. And when I finally started recording the screen, my reflection in the glass made me want to crawl out of my skin. Pale, hunched, eyes glossy. Like a ghost watching his own funeral. The man she was sitting with, tall, sharp jawline, eyes that looked too used to admiration, leaned in, whispered something, and she laughed again. That same fake laugh I heard when she lied about the office holiday party. The one she said I wasn't invited to because it was just execs this time. I sat there until someone from the event staff asked me if I needed help. I said no. Then I got up and walked out of the building with no idea where I was going. I didn't even realize it had started raining until I felt the drops running down my neck. I got into my car and stared at the dashboard for nearly 40 minutes. The air was thick. My clothes stuck to me. I didn't cry. I just blinked so hard I gave myself a headache. When I got home, the house was too quiet. Her shoes weren't by the door. Her scarf wasn't on the hook. But the heating was on. It was like she still lived here, just somewhere else at the same time. That night, she texted. "So sorry, babe. Today was a nightmare. Meeting went long. I'm crashing at Rachel's. Love you, love." Rachel. I opened my laptop, downloaded the footage, and dragged the file into a folder I named Nothing. Because that's what I felt like now. Nothing. I didn't sleep. Not even a second. I laid on the couch, fully clothed, shoes still damp from the rain, just staring at the ceiling while the video replayed in my head like some sick loop. Her laughter, his hand on her thigh, the way she leaned into him like gravity worked differently when he was near. I tried closing my eyes, but every time I did, that image of her smiling at him like she used to smile at me would snap open behind my eyelids, sharper than before. By morning, the house still felt like a stranger's place. You know what's funny? You live in the same space for years, and it only takes one night of knowing you've been lied to for every corner to turn alien. Even the damn coffee mug felt dishonest in my hands. She didn't come home. That was expected. What wasn't expected was the message she left on the bathroom mirror. Written in lipstick. Like we were in some low-budget rom-com instead of a crumbling marriage. It read, "I'll explain everything tonight. Please don't jump to conclusions. I love you." She really wrote that. In lipstick. Like I'd misread her sitting with a stranger, half-naked by a private pool, drinking wine at noon. Like there was a logical reason she was wrapped in another man's arm while telling me she was in a conference call with finance. I spent most of that day watching the footage again. Not because I needed more confirmation, I didn't. But because I couldn't help trying to spot the moment where she stopped being mine. The second her smile turned foreign. The first flicker of distance. And the more I watched, the more I realized I'd never actually known how far gone she already was. I wasn't losing her. I'd already lost her. I just didn't know yet. When the door finally creaked open at 6:13 p.m., I didn't move. I sat on the couch with the screen paused on her face, mid-laugh, eyes sparkling, some lock of hair falling across her cheek. My laptop glowed in the dim living room like it was holding a secret too big for the room. "Ellis," she called out. Her voice was low, cautious, like she already knew the house didn't belong to her anymore. Why is it so dark in here? I didn't answer. Just reached forward and clicked play. The sound wasn't loud, just enough for her to hear it from the hallway. She stepped in slowly. I didn't look at her, not yet. I watched the exact moment on screen when she leaned in and kissed him. Just a soft press of lips, like they'd done it 100 times before. Like she didn't even think twice. Behind me, I heard her breath hitch. Ellis. Don't, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded flat, hollowed out. She walked around the couch and saw the screen. Her face went white. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She just stood there, frozen, her purse still hanging from her shoulder. I saw it by accident, I said, finally turning to her. Wasn't looking for it. Didn't want it. But I saw it. That wasn't what it looked like, she said, quickly, too quickly. That line. That garbage line. I almost laughed. Almost. I don't think the problem is what it looked like, Lorna. I think the problem is that you did it knowing I'd never see it. She didn't respond. Just blinked. Hard. And then the tears came. Not the kind I expected. Not regret. Not shame. These were tears of fear. Not for what she'd done, but for what I might do with the knowledge of it. I swear, it wasn't planned. He was just there. It was a stupid moment. It wasn't a moment, I interrupted. It was a whole afternoon. Multiple camera angles. Different outfits. You don't get wardrobe changes in a moment. She dropped her bag. Sat down across from me. Tried to reach for my hand. I pulled back. And for the first time, I think she realized she'd crossed a line that couldn't be walked back. I didn't sleep with him, she whispered. I didn't ask. I didn't care. At that point, it wasn't about what she did with her body. It was what she did with the part of herself she once promised belonged to me. I stood up, closed the laptop, walked to the bedroom, and shut the door behind me. I didn't lock it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat on the edge of the bed and realized I'd spent the last few years loving someone who no longer even remembered what love meant. And the worst part? I still wanted to believe her. The hours after that confrontation were colder than any argument we ever had. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet. Heavy. I stayed in the bedroom with the door cracked slightly, not to invite conversation, but because even shutting it felt too final, too loud. The house didn't feel like a shared space anymore. It felt like a museum of habits we built together and no longer fit inside. I heard her pacing the living room for a while. Then the clink of a glass. Wine. I assumed. That was her go-to when she couldn't talk her way out of a mess. Sip. Sigh. Silence. She always said she hated confrontation, but the truth is, she hated being held accountable. I laid on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. I wasn't planning what to say next. I wasn't even angry in the way I thought I'd be. I was just tired, emotionally bald. Everything inside me had already been stripped raw by that 30 seconds of video footage. It didn't matter if she denied it or cried or said it was a misunderstanding. The seed of doubt had bloomed, and it filled every inch of the room with its poison. Eventually, I got up. I didn't want to. My body fought it. But some part of me, maybe the last functioning thread of the old me, needed to hear her admit it. Or at least try to lie one more time, just so I'd know what her lying voice sounded like when she knew there was no way out. She was curled on the far end of the couch, hugging a throw pillow, mascara smeared just slightly, like she hadn't committed fully to the crying but wanted the visual effect of sorrow. The wine glass was nearly empty. Her phone sat screen up beside her, and I saw a message flash briefly before it faded. Did he find out? I didn't even blink. I sat down in the chair across from her. She looked up but didn't say anything. What do you tell him I am? I asked. My voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. Her brows pulled together. What do you mean? The guy. The one in the video. The one with the perfect teeth and the pressed shirt. What does he think I am? A roommate? A clueless husband you pity? A shadow that lingers in the background of your life? She opened her mouth but paused, searching for an angle that wouldn't sound monstrous. But the silence beat her to it. I don't talk about you, she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Not out of surprise, but because of how honest it probably was. She didn't talk about me, because she had built an entire life separate from me, and dragging my name into it would ruin the fantasy. Do you love him? I asked. Her eyes shot up. No, she said too quickly. No, Ellis. It wasn't like that. I swear to you. It was stupid. It was temporary. I didn't. I don't even like him like that. I didn't press her. Because here's the truth no one ever admits out loud. It's not the sex. It's not even the lies. It's that someone else got the version of her that used to belong to you, the soft smiles, the inside jokes, the warmth. And she chose to give it to them. That's the betrayal that keeps you up at night. That's the one that makes you want to crawl out of your own skin. Why am? I asked. She hesitated again, and I could see her sorting through half-baked answers she didn't believe in herself. He made me feel seen, she said finally. I let that sink in. I see you, I replied quietly. I've always seen you. You just stopped seeing me. I stood up then. Not because I had a dramatic walk-away line, not because I wanted her to chase after me, but because I knew if I stayed there 1 second longer, I would either break down or say something I couldn't take back. As I reached the hallway, she spoke again. I don't want to lose you. I paused but didn't turn around. You already did, I said. You just haven't noticed yet. I spent the night on the guest bed. Not because I was angry, because I needed a place where the sheets didn't smell like her. And sometime after 3 a.m., I opened the folder I had named Nothing, stared at the still frame of her holding another man's hand, and renamed it Truth. I woke up in the guest room feeling like I hadn't slept at all. It was one of those half-conscious nights where your brain refuses to shut off, replaying every word, every glance, every pause in conversation from the night before, like it's trying to spot something you missed the first time. The sun was up, but the house still felt dim. She was already gone. Again. Just like that, no knock, no, can we talk, no trace of her in the hallway. As if she'd slipped out while I was still dreaming of a time when things made sense. I wasn't planning to check her laptop. Honestly, I don't even know what possessed me to do it. I had no strategy. No endgame. I wasn't out for revenge. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just knew that every word coming out of her mouth lately sounded like it had passed through a filter. The kind people use when they don't want to lie, but they definitely don't want to tell the truth either. She had left her MacBook on the dining table, open, as if she either trusted me entirely or, more likely, forgot I existed as someone who still mattered. I walked past it twice, sat down, stood up again. Then finally, I pulled out the chair and opened the lid fully. The desktop was clean, too clean, like someone had scrubbed it down for inspection. No files, just a calendar widget, a Spotify playlist titled Deep Focus, and a folder labeled Receipts. I clicked on it. Nothing unusual, dry cleaner invoices, Uber rides, a few Amazon returns. But it was the banking tab in her browser that made my stomach knot. She had 3 accounts. I knew about 2. The third had a name I didn't recognize, LKM Holdings. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I clicked. A login window popped up. For some reason, maybe instinct, maybe dumb luck, I typed in the name of the resort where I saw her on the video screen. It worked. I don't know how to explain the dread that flooded me when the page loaded. It wasn't the kind of panic that hits you fast and hot. It was slow, cold, the kind that makes your hands go numb and your mouth dry instantly. She had transferred over $32,000 in the last 7 months to that account, all from our joint savings, labeled as internal adjustments. Small increments, just under the threshold where I'd get alerts, spread out like little lies across time. That's when it hit me. This wasn't emotional betrayal anymore. This was logistical, pre-planned. She hadn't just cheated on me physically, she was building a life where I didn't exist. A life where I was just a funding source. I scrolled through the transactions and found a payment to a travel agency, 2 plane tickets. Open-ended. Destination, Costa Rica. Date, in 3 weeks. I leaned back in the chair. The walls seemed to narrow around me. I wasn't angry, not yet. What I felt was worse. I felt erased. Like someone had been painting over my life, layer by layer, and I was only now realizing how little of it was left. When she came home later that evening, I didn't confront her right away. I watched her. Closely. The way she avoided eye contact, the way her fingers tapped against her leg when I asked how work was, the way she smiled too hard at nothing in particular. And finally, I asked the one question that had been burning in my throat all day. Are you planning to leave? She froze. Her spoon hovered midair over the soup I made, which she hadn't even touched. What? Leave, I repeated. Not just emotionally. Physically. Are you planning to disappear one day while I'm at work and take everything with you? She laughed. Not genuinely. The kind of laugh that's meant to buy time. Where is this coming from, Ellis? I looked her dead in the eyes. Costa Rica. Round trip for 2. Does that ring a bell? Her face drained of color in real time. She didn't even try to pretend she didn't know. I watched her inhale, then exhale slowly. That's when I realized she had rehearsed this moment. She just never expected me to be the one initiating it. "I was going to tell you," she said, finally. "No," I whispered. "You were going to vanish." And I meant it. She wasn't preparing a confrontation. She was preparing an escape. A clean one. One where I'd come home to a note and a bank balance that didn't even have enough left for rent. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time, I wasn't just drowning in shock. I was planning. That night, after she finally went to bed, and I pretended to fall asleep beside her, I got up as silently as I could, walked into the kitchen, and stood by the sink for almost an hour doing nothing. Just standing there. My hand gripped the edge of the counter until it went numb. My reflection ghosted in the dark window above the faucet. Everything I thought I knew about my life had turned into a lie I wasn't part of. And the most agonizing part? She was still here. Still sleeping in my bed. Still walking around our home in her fuzzy socks, making tea like she hadn't already emotionally burned the place to the ground. I opened my laptop and went back to the bank records. I screenshotted every single transaction and emailed them to a burner account I'd made in college and never deleted. Then I did something I wasn't sure I had the stomach for. I went into our cloud drive. The one we used for tax paperwork and receipts. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd find more proof of the money she'd siphoned. Maybe airline confirmations or invoices. Instead, I found a document she must have accidentally left unlocked. It was a list. A literal bullet point list. At the top, in all caps, "Exit strategy." Every hair on my body stood on end. It wasn't written like a diary. No emotion. Just a sterile checklist. She had written it like she was managing a project. Each line made my heart thud deeper into my gut. "Move funds out of joint account by September 3rd. Finalize rental in San Jose. Confirm balcony unit. Schedule international SIM card for new number. Speak to J. Fake story, car accident plus relocation. Leave note only if necessary. Do not tell Ellis in advance. Too unpredictable." That last one. Too unpredictable. That one broke me more than any kiss on camera ever could. She wasn't just cheating on me. She had been actively calculating my emotional volatility like I was some wild animal. Someone to tiptoe around. Someone to contain. She had planned this entire escape, down to the cover story she was going to feed mutual friends about me, not taking it well, so they wouldn't ask questions when she disappeared. And meanwhile, I had been home trying to plan date nights and wondering if I was overthinking things when she stopped saying goodnight. I didn't wake her. I didn't scream. I didn't even touch her. But that night, I made a plan of my own. It started with a storage unit. I booked it that morning, paid 3 months in advance, and started slowly moving my most important things: old photos of my parents, my grandmother's ring, documents, the few pieces of furniture I bought before we met. Things that were mine, untouched by her. Then came the backup account. I opened a new checking account at a different bank under my middle name. I had to dig up my old passport to prove identity. I started redirecting my paycheck there without her noticing. Small steps. Invisible ones. I began printing copies of everything: bank statements, the exit plan doc, even her calendar invites. Because I wasn't going to confront her emotionally again. I was going to outmaneuver her. And one evening, exactly 2 weeks after I found her plan, she stood in the doorway brushing her teeth and casually said, "We should plan a weekend away. Maybe clear our heads." I looked up from my laptop, nodded slowly, and said, "Sure. Somewhere warm." She smiled. Exactly. It chilled me to the bone. Because in her head, I was still in the dark. Still oblivious. Still that sad-eyed husband who she could keep in the fog just long enough to vanish. She didn't know I had already emptied half the house of my valuables, rerouted my income, documented everything, and made an appointment with a lawyer she didn't know existed. She also didn't know I'd met with someone from her company. Not a manager. Not a friend. A contractor. The AV tech. The same one who worked the private event where I first saw her with the other man. I found him. His name was Micah. We met in a cafe after I offered to pay him for 15 minutes of his time. He didn't ask too many questions. I think he already knew what it was about the moment he saw my face. He had copies of the video feed. He had raw footage, not just what streamed in the lobby. What he gave me changed everything. Because in one of those recordings, she wasn't just laughing. She was saying things. Things I never imagined would come out of her mouth. About me. About what she really thought of me. About what this new version of her life would finally be free of. That was the moment the last thread snapped. And I knew this wasn't about saving the marriage. It was about surviving the final act. I watched the videos in complete silence. Micah had sent me a secure drive, clean, encrypted, and unedited. He wasn't being kind. He was being careful. He knew exactly what kind of fallout this footage might cause if it landed in the wrong hands. But he sent it anyway, and when I asked why, he said, "You deserve to know what they say about you when you're not in the room." The first clip wasn't anything I hadn't already seen. It was the same patio scene, the whine, the laugh, her hand slipping too easily onto that man's chest. I thought I'd be numb by now, but there's something surreal about watching the woman you married flirt like she's in a rom-com, only you're not the co-star. You're not even on the call sheet. The second clip is where it started. She was in a smaller room, sitting on the arm of a leather chair, drink in one hand, dangling her heels off the edge like a teenager at a sleepover. 3 people were there, 2 women, 1 man. They were all dressed like they were relaxing after something important. But what chilled me was her tone. "He still thinks I'm just overworked," she said, laughing. "It's pathetic." Someone off camera asked, "You haven't told him anything yet?" She shook her head. "No. God, no." He'd crumble. And then she said it. "He's not a partner. He's a placeholder. You know those types? Soft. Grateful. He was never built to be challenged. Just wanted to love me like it was enough." They laughed. I didn't. Because in that sentence, she didn't just dismiss our marriage, she rewrote it. Erased every sacrifice, every gesture, every quiet morning I made her coffee or stayed up listening to her cry about her dead father. Gone. Like none of it counted because I wasn't thrilling enough to be her scandal. I paused the video, stood up, and walked outside barefoot into the cold night air. I needed something sharp. Real. My chest felt tight, like the walls had turned to glass and were closing in. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was embarrassed. Humiliated in a way that doesn't scream or break things. The kind of shame that makes you stare at your own reflection and wonder how you missed the signs. And then I made my final move. The next morning, I called my lawyer and gave him the green light. The prenup, which she never read properly, had one clause buried deep: infidelity with proof, tied to financial deception, nullified her right to any joint assets accumulated after marriage. And I had it all now. Screenshots, video, bank transfers, the exit strategy document. Her words. It was airtight. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. I wanted quiet. I didn't serve her papers immediately. I waited until she made her next move, which came faster than expected. 3 days later, she forgot her phone on the kitchen counter while taking a long shower. That wasn't like her. I checked it, not to invade her privacy, but because by now I'd realized there wasn't any privacy left between us, just secrets. And there it was, a draft message to her lover. Tickets booked. Got the money out without triggering his alerts. Leaving next Saturday. He's still clueless. Almost feel bad. Almost. I took a photo of that draft and sent it to my email. Then I did something strange. I deleted it. Not to cover for her, but because I didn't want her knowing I was ahead of her. I wanted her to walk into her own plan blindly, thinking she had the upper hand. That was the only power I had left, the element of surprise. That evening, I made dinner. Chicken piccata, her favorite. We sat at the table like any normal couple, sipping wine, making light conversation. She didn't even flinch. She actually smiled when she said, "This is really good tonight, babe." I almost choked on the irony. She had no idea. I watched her closely as she picked at her salad. My mind flashed to the clip again, "He's a placeholder." The words echoed in the space between us like a silent alarm I couldn't shut off. I nodded politely, got up to clear the table, and said, "We should take a weekend trip soon. Just the 2 of us." Her eyes flickered, just briefly, then softened. "Yeah, maybe somewhere warm?" "Exactly," I said. She smiled. I smiled back. Because now we were both lying. But only one of us would be ready when the truth arrived. Saturday arrived quietly. Too quietly. There was a weird stillness in the house that morning. Even the dog, Pickle, didn't bark like usual. He just sat by the back door staring out at nothing, as if he knew something was off. I stood in the kitchen pretending to scroll through my phone, sipping coffee I didn't even taste. Lorna was upstairs, moving with careful rhythm, the drawers opening and closing, the closet doors creaking slightly. She was packing, but not like someone going on a business trip. This was slower, more methodical. I could hear the hesitation in the way she zipped the bag, like she was rehearsing the story she'd tell whoever asked where she'd gone. The plan, as she thought it stood, was simple: I'd head to the grocery store around noon like I always did on Saturdays. She'd kiss me goodbye, act normal, maybe send a fake check and text an hour later. Then, once I was out, she'd leave with everything she'd quietly prepped over the past few weeks: passport, new phone, backup credit card, and the lies she thought would never catch up to her. The plane tickets were booked. The man was waiting. What she didn't know was that the man she was about to run off with had already been served. Micah, the AV guy, had passed along more than just footage. He gave me a name. That's all I needed. I hired a discreet legal courier who tracked down the other man, Tyler, at a hotel bar 3 nights before their scheduled flight. He wasn't expecting it. He thought it was a drink delivery. Instead, he got a neat folder containing a formal warning letter from my attorney, detailing pending fraud allegations if he participated in the unauthorized transfer of marital funds. Tyler didn't reply. He just walked out of the bar and went completely silent. Blocked Lorna's number the next morning. Canceled his half of the reservation. But I didn't tell her, because I wanted to see her try to leave me for someone who had already left her. At exactly 11:50 a.m., I picked up my keys and said, "I'm heading out. You need anything?" She smiled from the hallway, holding her coat. "No, I'm good. Drive safe." It was strange, watching her smile while her entire world was seconds from collapse. I nodded and walked out the door. Didn't start the car. Just crossed the street and sat in my neighbor's garage, which he'd graciously offered for this one bizarre favor. He owed me after I covered his fence repair. Now he handed me a thermos of coffee, opened the garage door just enough for me to peek out, and said, "You sure you want to do this?" I didn't answer. At 12:09 p.m., the front door of my house opened. Lorna stepped out pulling a small suitcase, coat buttoned, sunglasses on. No hesitation. She walked like it was just another errand. She tossed her bag in the back of her car, climbed in, and drove off. I followed at a distance. I knew where she was going, the airport's short-term lot, but it still stung watching her drive without a glance back. As if all of it, the dinners, the anniversaries, the lazy Sundays on the couch, meant absolutely nothing. Like she was already someone else. I parked on the upper level of the terminal garage. From where I sat, I could see her pacing near the check-in counter. She kept checking her phone, looking around, then checking again. I watched this cycle repeat for 15 minutes. She never looked relaxed, just nervous, like she was waiting for a signal from someone who had promised her everything. That signal never came. At 12:47 p.m., she pulled out her phone and tried to call. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. I saw her type furiously. Her thumb stabbed at the screen. Her lips were moving, probably whispering things like, "Where are you?" or "Please don't do this." She finally sat down on a bench near the window, completely still. The truth was settling in. She had burned her marriage to the ground for a man who hadn't even cared enough to show up. And that man had disappeared because I'd given him the very reality she tried to avoid: consequences. I waited another 20 minutes before texting her. "Me, still planning to run?" She didn't reply right away. I saw her jaw clench as she read it. She stood up slowly, looked around like I might be nearby. Then her phone buzzed again. "Me, he's not coming. You should get back before the neighbors notice what's missing." Still no reply. Then I sent the last one. "Me, check your email." I'd sent her everything: the screenshots, the video clips, the exit plan PDF with her own handwriting, and the signed paperwork from my lawyer stating her rights to any future shared assets had been formally revoked. Her reaction wasn't visible from where I sat, but she didn't move for nearly 10 minutes. Eventually, she got up, dragged her suitcase back to her car, and drove off, not toward the gates, not toward the departure hall. She went home, where nothing waited for her anymore. She walked through the front door like a different person. Not the Lorna I married. Not even the Lorna I'd been watching unravel piece by piece over the last several weeks. This version of her was quieter, smaller, like the weight of what she had lost was finally starting to settle onto her shoulders. Her keys hit the entryway table with a thud that echoed through the house louder than any argument we ever had. I was sitting in the living room when she came in. No music. No distractions. Just me, on the couch, with a folder of printed documents resting on the table between us, the final draft of our separation agreement, my signature already in place. She didn't say anything for a long time. Eventually, she stepped forward, looked down at the folder, and asked in a voice barely above a whisper, "How long have you known?" I didn't look up. "Since the moment you told me you were in a meeting, and I saw you on a screen laughing in someone else's arms." Silence. "I didn't think it would go this far," she said. "But it did," I replied. "You made sure of it." She sat down across from me, but the air between us felt wider than ever. She didn't cry. Maybe she'd already done that. Maybe there was nothing left to wring out of her. I never stopped caring about you, she said. Even if it doesn't seem like it. You just stopped respecting me, I said, still calm. And once that's gone, love doesn't have anywhere to live. She nodded slowly. No more excuses. No lies. She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't beg. And I think that was the only decent thing she did since all of this began. She reached for the folder and looked through the pages. Her hand paused halfway down the second sheet when she saw the clause that returned everything I had removed from the joint account. I had moved the funds temporarily to protect them, not to keep them. Once I knew she had no legal claim, I brought the money back. That's more generous than I expected, she said. I didn't want revenge, Lorna, I said. I just wanted my life back. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. That was already behind us. What followed was oddly civil. I gave her a week to move out. No drama. No exposure. No social media fallout. I wasn't interested in humiliating her. I just wanted distance. The night she left for good, I stood in the doorway and watched her car disappear down the street. The house felt quiet, but for the first time in months, it wasn't the kind of quiet that made my skin crawl. It was clean, honest, like the air had been cleared of every whispered lie. I started therapy 2 weeks later, not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to rebuild without carrying pieces of her in the foundation. I stopped asking why she did it, stopped playing the tape in my head. I let it go, because that chapter was done. Not perfect, not without scars, but done. A few months passed. I went back to the coffee shop where Micah and I first met, not expecting to see him again. But there he was, same table, same hoodie, same laptop. He looked up, surprised. Hey, he said. You look lighter. I am, I told him. Weirdly. We talked for a while. About work. Life. What came next? Then, right before I left, he said something I'll never forget. You're not the man she said you were. Just so you know. That stuck with me. Because for so long, I'd started to believe maybe I was the placeholder. The backup. The soft one. But I wasn't. I was the one who stood quietly through the storm, endured the collapse, and walked out whole on the other side. 6 months later, I moved out of that house. Bought a small place outside the city, nothing fancy, just something that felt like mine. I planted a garden. Got a second dog. Learned how to cook things without picturing her across the table. And one day, on a rainy morning, I found myself laughing over coffee with someone new, not a rebound, not a distraction, just a kind, warm soul who didn't see me as a backup plan. She asked why I smiled so much, even when it rained. I told her the truth. Because once, I thought I'd never smile again. And then I did.